say a few things from my heart. You officially opened the second supply chain national dialogue a few days after our President, His Excellency William Ruto, inaugurated the pending bills verification committee. This is to validate what the government owes suppliers of goods and services. Pending bills is one of the biggest challenges in the supply chain. It is also a right threat to sprouting private enterprises, which we are encouraging in building a strong economy. It is for this reason that we should be proud that today the President decided to verify nearly 600 billion Kenya shillings worth of pending bills for payment to unlock the investment potential of this great country. This will not only revive enterprises and spur economic growth, but also enhance confidence in private sector doing business with government. To streamline the supply chain sector, such conversations as you have here today of diverse stakeholders are critical in identifying salient issues and recommending operational, legal, and policy reviews. Distinguished participants, this supply chain national dialogue, this is the first supply chain dialogue under our administration. Supply chain is a critical component under the 5 pillars of the Kenya Kwanza plan. As per the theme of the conference, the government is interested in knowing how the supply chain will contribute to achievement of the plan in agriculture, micro, small, and medium enterprise economy, the housing and settlement, the healthcare, and the digital superhighway and creative economy. This is of great interest to us as an administration. For instance, we are undertaking reforms in the agricultural sector to put more money into the pocket of the farmer. For full realization of this initiative, the supply chain has a direct contribution to lowering the cost of production. A long and bureaucratic process in procurement and supply of farm inputs piles the cost onto the farmer. Cheaper farm inputs means farmers produce more to a surplus for export. Distinguished participants, similarly, there should be a streamlined supply chain linking the supplier directly to the consumer. Furthermore, the supply chain must align its operations to seize and capture emerging opportunities. Kenya was one of the first African Union member states to sign, ratify, and transact under the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, with 47 African states having signed and deposited instruments of ratification of the Trade Pact. This links Kenya to a market of over 1.3 billion people across the continent. It is time to restructure our operations for the benefit of our people. For instance, the small-scale tea farmer in Imenti, Meru, or Nyankoma in Nyamira should enjoy the economies of scale in the two-way supplies under the Trade Pact. This has to trickle down into the other pillars of the plan. Supply chain offers an opportunity to everyone to do business, especially with the government. However, emerging enterprises may be locked out of tenders because of limited financial muscle. Although our country has been ranked among the top in financial innovation, micro, small, and medium enterprises face a 2.2 trillion Kenya shillings funding deficit. This is one of the reasons more than 80% of potent MSMEs wither before their third birthday. President William Ruto established a full-fledged ministry on MSMEs and cooperatives to ease access to financial support and spur growth from the bottom. It is a lifeline for MSMEs which may not access funding from mainstream financial institutions. Most SMEs require between 100,000 Kenya shillings and 1 million Kenya shillings. The Hustler Fund is bridging the financial gap with varied products, including the Hustler Group Fund. But this financial inclusion will make sense if we actualize the tendering process to also favor upcoming enterprises, which may not have a rich track record. Women, the youth, and people living with disabilities must and should benefit in a big way if we are to uplift the hustler to the high table. That is why the supply chain must ensure tendering processes are inclusive. Distinguished participants, we cannot have an inclusive supply chain that does not value integrity. We cannot have an inclusive supply chain that does not regard transparency and non-interference. The supply chain has the key to birthing the next generation of millionaires from the bottom. This is through encouraging and fully implementing a transparent and fair tendering and procurement process. In the face of digital technology, doing business with government should be highly open for public scrutiny with monitoring and follow-up mechanisms. As we work to end corruption from the supply chain, we need to move to the digital space in all procurement processes, from tendering to delivery of goods and services. With more innovation, as we move to incorporating artificial intelligence, minimizing human interaction in e-procurement, we will save the public billions of shillings ordinarily lost to corruption. We have the capacity to implement foolproof systems. We have adequate laws, and we are ready to strengthen the existing ones where there are gaps. Distinguished guests, we cannot keep complaining that we lose billions of shillings to corruption. The government has allocated taxpayers' resources to institutions to root out this vice. I would like to appeal to the public to also support the relevant agencies in evidence-based complaints on corruption. We must not normalize corruption, no matter how small it is. We all have a stake in clean business in the supply chain. On this note, I look forward to a robust and specific action points for our consideration. I now declare the second supply chain national dialogue officially open. If I may just add a few issues have been raised, and I may have one or two things in addition to what me and my team had put together. In my earlier life, before I came this way, I was one of your clients, and I've dealt for the better part of my life with procurement officers, as in our own small way we did business with government. The biggest business in this country is with government. And therefore we have a responsibility to make sure that it works. The committee the President has put in place to scrutinize, verify, and validate pending bills is critical in restoring the confidence of the financial systems in government documents. During the Kibaki era, when things were working and working well, LPO financing was a reality. You could walk with an LPO to any bank, to any microfinance, and get 50% of what you require, because the financial institutions were sure that once goods have been delivered, once services have been given, payment will be forthcoming. Today, because of pending bills spanning over 7 years, an LPO, an LSO, a contract between the government and a supplier is no longer respected by our financial institutions, because there is no surety, there is no certainty that it will be honored. I want to request all procurement officers in the national government and in the county governments to work closely with that committee to finalize its work within a year, so that all pending bills are scrutinized, verified, validated, and the ones that are payable can be paid, and the ones that are not payable can be discarded. And going forward, as an administration, we are insisting that you shouldn't place an order for goods and services without the corresponding availability of exchequer, so that we can do away with the issue of pending bills once and for all. They are a headache to you, to your finance officers, because every year when you end up with the pending bills, it complicates your work in the next financial year. I want to agree with the speaker from Kisim here that supply chain managers and their procurement officers have been, in a blanket manner, been profiled as exceedingly corrupt. And that is not the case. It is true. Like every other sector, there are few rogue procurement officers, maybe 5%, who are involved in corruption, who are involved in interfering with the tendering process, who are involved in theft of public funds. But there is another 95% of serious professionals who are patriotic and who work professionally for their country and for the benefit of society. So we want to call upon everybody not to have a blanket condemnation of an entire sector. Let people be known by name and by where they work. And I want to say, I have seen many times procurement officers being unfairly targeted for no good reason without sufficient cause of action. Most of cases that were filed by the previous administration against procurement officers, against finance officers, against PSs, 90% of them have collapsed for lack of evidence. Others are being withdrawn because they cannot meet the threshold. And I would like to take this opportunity to urge our investigative agencies, the EACC, the DCI, to recruit procurement professionals to be investigators, to help them in investigations. Most of these policemen are clueless about procurement, you know? And they have basically no idea. In fact, they are motivated by big figures. It reached a time in this country where any procurement that was of a large figure was deemed to be a corrupt procurement, irrespective of the merits or the demerits of the due process. Procurement is about due process. Investigators can only investigate a matter to do with procurement when they understand the whole cycle of procurement. And I'm calling upon EACC, advertise for professionals who are supply chain managers. They'll apply and become your investigators. And then they can help you. Advertise for bankers. I personally know many procurement officers who suffered when the previous administration was going for me, and they were being victimized along the way for no reason. They were not the target, I was the target. But they were the fall guys because they are the ones who process. But at the end of the whole investigation, it's all nonsense. Because these officers have no idea. He's a constable, a corporal, akiona tu LPO, anasema hapa iko corruption. He does not know, what it takes for the process from requisition all the way to award, all the way to supply, all the way to verification and the payment. But we are saying 5% of your peers are not good people. And they are spoiling the name of the entire fraternity. So much as we are calling for professional investigations, I think we need within ourselves to do soul searching. And the way you have said you have a section that deals with that, I think that is very healthy. You can do what the lawyers do with the LSK. They regulate themselves. You can have your own ethical standards and demand ethical practice among yourselves to protect the image of the profession. Otherwise, the way it is, you'll be condemned in a blanket manner. And that should never be the case. So we are calling for integrity. We are calling for you people to be patriotic to your country and to do what is right and to follow due process. And then the few people who cannot do what is right can be dealt with by the law. I also want to appeal to you to respect the AGPO procurement. Procurement set aside for women, youth, and people with disability has been abused under your watch. There is a lot of conniving. People register companies, they use women, but the women are nowhere. And you know, you are actually the ones who advise them what to do, yourselves. You get young people, you register them as youth, but the people who are doing business are not the youth. You get people with disability, you ask them to register companies on your behalf, you do business, so that you benefit from the priority that has been given for those groups. I want to appeal to your conscience as Kenyans, as parents, as responsible people, to allow this group an opportunity to do business. The women who are disadvantaged, the youth, and the people with disability. And it's about you people. Because you know these people. And you should not participate in circumventing the whole intervention by people doing what is not right under the guise of being at the AGPO. Again, is the issue of our local people. In 2018, as Member of Parliament for Madeira, I brought a bill, Procurement and Disposal Asset Amendment Bill of 2018 as a private member's bill, and it was frustrated when we went into this handshake nonsense. It was going very well until the handshake came in. And the purpose of that bill, the way I had intended to be, was to protect the local contractors and suppliers. In that bill, I had proposed that all businesses up to R1 billion be left exclusively for indigenous Kenyans only. I had, from 1 billion going ahead, I had proposed that foreigners who want to do supplies, who want to do contracts, must give 30 to 40% of the local content to Kenyans, clearly defined as a separate bid document, so that that business can go to the people of Kenya. This issue has never found its right footing. But now that we are in government, I'm going to start this discussion again with the leader of the majority in the National Assembly, the Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah, so that we can bring these changes as a government bill so that they can go faster, so that we protect our local people. But again, we also ask our local contractors to be responsible. We have seen in the road sector where they have been given contracts, most of them, when they get the mobilization fee, they disappear. Some of them take their children to America, others they buy huge vehicles, and the projects never get anywhere. Much as we are trying to protect our local people, they also must exercise responsibility to their country and actually do the job because they have the capacity to do it. But sometimes they don't want to do it for whatever reason. I have heard about the regulatory authority and other institutions that there is obvious need to enhance your capacity, both human resource and financial. That is true. And you have put it very well, that investigative agencies have such a huge capacity all over the country. But if you people are sufficiently given a good capacity, you would make sure that 3/4 of those cases the investigative agencies handle do not even reach there. That is true. We are going to have a discussion with Professor Dongo so that we see what to do, because I agree we need to intervene at this level. I think it's much more neater. We do it even before we lose the public funds, because the investigators come when funds are already lost. Again, I agree, representation in various boards, actually it would add value. It would add value, because I have seen in many boards we ask for a lawyer, we ask for an engineer, we ask for an accountant. And I agree, most of the issues, again, they revolve around the supply chain. So it would make sense if these boards of our state corporations, there is a professional from the supply chain area to help them. Because most decisions that are made in these boards largely have something to do with procurement, because it's the beginning of all activities. So that is another discussion that we are going to have with the president, and I think is a fair request. I agree 100%. It's a reasonable request. Again, you have talked about the scheme of service for our supply chain managers and officers. It's true, lack of a clear scheme of service can be very demoralizing to officers in the public sector. I come from the public sector background. I served for 15 years in the public sector. And I know that when people stagnate in one job group, or when there is no clear roadmap for career progression, it can be inhibiting to one's motivation and development in that career. I'll also initiate a discussion with the PS Public Service together with the Public Service Commission, so that you bring proposals on a scheme of service for the officers in this space, so that it is clear you enter at this job group, you serve for so long. From there, if it's satisfactory and your work is good, you proceed. From there, you do a certain exam, you pass, you proceed. I think it's good to define career progression through a scheme of service. So I think, again, I'm happy that you have raised it. This is something that I'm going to follow, so that we can see how it goes. Again, you have talked about the Directorate of Supply Chain Management vis-a-vis the other directorates in the National Treasury and the way they are placed in terms of the portfolio they handle. Again, that is something that we are going to discuss. Finally, I want to say, you people, you are doing a good job, and continue. The few who are letting us down, please try to adjust and improve. Isn't it? There are few who are letting us down. That is true. But you must agree, our administration is different. The administration that was there before used the criminal justice system to settle extraneous issues outside procurement. These investigations were not about procurement, they were about politics and vendetta. And you people are just the culprits.
Since we came, the Friday arrests, the kamata are not there. Sindio? I know you people are not sleeping. Procurement officers used to dread Friday. Kama unalala ukisikia tu gari inapita unakosa usingizi. Hiyo maneno tulisema ni maneno ya ujinga na ni maneno ambayo hatakikani kwa demokrasia kama hii. All non-cognizable offenses, there is no reason to arrest anybody on a Friday. If somebody has committed a non-cognizable offense, you summon that person to the office during normal working hours to come and explain. And if there is enough evidence to take them to court, you give them a board to report in court on the appointed day. There's no reason to punish people when you have not proven they have committed a crime. Our administration is for the rule of law and due process. Those who engage in corruption will be dealt with according to the law, but we will not do witch hunt and victimize people for no reason, or treat people like criminals when they are not. You know, it reached a point where procurement officers and finance officers were vilified that even their children started looking at them like they are criminals. Kila mtu akija hapa kwa TV anasema nyinyi ni wezi. Sasa hata watoto wanaanza kushangaa na huyu baba wetu kumbe hata yeye ni mwizi. You know, it was a very unfair thing. Let everybody take responsibility for your action. Let us not condemn an entire sector of governance. It is unnecessary. But the truth of the matter, there are challenges by a few people. Please correct it. Let us dignify the profession because it's important that we do so. Let us have integrity. Let us aspire to serve. And let us aspire to earn an honest living. In matters audit queries, the way the president has directed, you people are very instrumental in answering audit queries. Please provide the answers. And I have seen in my public life many issues that end up in the report of the Auditor General. It's not because anything wrong has been done. It's because you people have not given the required information on time. Many people don't take audit queries seriously. And what happens when the auditors raise the queries and you don't answer? They go with the initial allegation and confirm it as true. I want you to aspire to dispense with audit queries by furnishing the external auditors with all the answers and the documents that they ask and explaining. And you know they even give you a second chance. They raise the issues and discuss with you, isn't it? They come before they even do their report that goes to the National Assembly. The external auditors are quite fair. They say, this is our report. Can you tell us otherwise? Please provide the information. Let your ministry or department not be viewed negatively in the National Assembly because of your failure to provide information. And most of this information, 80% comes from procurement. Please take time. Provide all the answers. Provide all the supporting documents to the auditor so that you are given a clean bill of health, so that your ministry, and by the way, when you fail to do so, you let down your accounting officer because you are the one who supports your accounting officer by giving the necessary documentation. Otherwise, I just want to assure you that despite the way things are looking like they are very bad, the way the media is portraying them, they are not that bad. We are not in very bad space in view of where we have come from. You know, many people are talking about the economy without looking at from where we have come from. During the inauguration day on 13th of September last year, I said in Kasarani, the kind of economy we found: empty coffers, 9.6 trillion public debt, demotivated public service, pending bills when people's goods were being auctioned. We were in bad space. But we asked ourselves a question. And the president was very clear. When you find yourself in a hole, the first thing you do is to stop digging. Then figure out how to come out. That's what we are doing. And we found assets and liabilities. The public debts we found, we must pay because they were committed by the government of the Republic of Kenya. Although we were not in office, we cannot run away from that responsibility. And the truth of the matter is that everybody expected us to default our obligations for debt. We have honored all our debt obligations to date. We are now figuring out how to deal with the Eurobond, the $2 billion Eurobond that is coming up early next year for payment. Once that has been dealt with, things will slowly settle. So I want to encourage you that there is light at the end of the tunnel. And the English say, the darkest hour is just before dawn. Looking ahead, the future looks okay, it looks bright, and all these things will settle. It's only that we found a huge public debt, including the pending bills that you yourselves you know, and you know what traders and contractors have gone through, you know. And it's not because people have refused to pay them, it's because there was no money. You know the challenges that you have had with the exchequer, because what we are collecting is not enough to match our needs, to match our development and recurrent expenditure. And that is why the president is on a charm offensive across the world, reaching out to development partners, reaching out to our international friends, trying to create a mechanism for mobilizing more investment in this country, trying to see how we get more foreign exchange earnings to this country. Many people criticize him for going out, and there's no problem. Criticism is part of governance, and we welcome constructive criticism. The president will continue reaching out to the world. He will continue reaching out to our international friends. He will continue reaching out to the multilateral lenders, the IMF, the World Bank, the ADB. He must continue doing that. He must continue reaching out to our bilateral partners so that we try to see how, working with our friends in the international arena, we can bridge our budget deficit and be able to meet both our recurrent and development expenditure and still have a surplus for more development. So as the drivers of our economy, because procurement is key, I want to assure you that things are okay. Just do your bit, be prudent, be fair, have integrity. Let's get value for money. Let us not allow exaggerated prices. Let us do proper market survey. Let us allow the traders a reasonable percentage of profit to cover for their wait, because they wait for longer as opposed to cash transaction. But let us not do 100%, 60%, 50%, 40% of profit. It is not fair. It's not good for the country. It's not value for money. And you people know what the market prices are. Do authentic market survey and allow a reasonable profit to allow the suppliers and the traders a markup so that they are able to meet their obligations with their financiers and make some little profit to keep life going. But let us not allow a process where people are reaping the public sector. And if people are determined to do that, I think it's good for this country. Otherwise, I want to say, nimeshukuru sana kufika hapa, na nyinyi mufanye kazi yenu, muongee mambo yenu hapa, mkubaliane, na sisi tufanye yetu. The things I have said I'll do. Hiyo nitafanya, na tutaendelea kuhakikisha you are handled with dignity when there are issues. Because it's important that we do so. If there are issues, let it be done in a dignified manner. Let us not embarrass people. Let us not treat people inhumanly. let us not profile people branch of government because it is not good to do so. So mimi namtakia mema, nyinyi muendelee mzungumuze maneno yenu.